Chapter 7. The shovel felt heavy in Stanley's soft, fleshy hand. He tried to jam it into the earth, but the blade banged against the ground and bounced off without making a dent. The vibrations ran up the shaft of the shovel into Stanley's wrist, making his bones rattle. It was still dark. The only light came from the moon and the stars, more stars than Stanley had ever seen before. It seemed he had only just gotten to sleep when Mr. Pandansky came up and woke everyone up. Using all his might, he brought the shovel back down onto the dry lake bed. The force stung his hand, but made no impression on the earth. He wondered if he had a defective shovel. He glanced at Zero about 15 feet away, who scooped up a shovelful of dirt and dumped it on a pile that was already almost a foot tall. For breakfast, they'd been served some kind of lukewarm cereal. The best part was the orange juice. They each got a pint carton. The cereal actually didn't taste too bad, but it had smelled just like his cot. Then they filled their canteens, got the shovels, and were marched out across the lake. Each group was assigned a different area. The shovels were kept in a shed near the showers. They all looked the same to Stanley, although X-Ray had his own special shovel, which no one else was allowed to use. X-Ray claimed it was shorter than the other shovels, but if it was only by a fraction of an inch. The shovels were 5 feet long, from the tip of the steel blade to the end of the wooden shaft. Stanley's hole would have to be as deep as his shovel, and he'd have to be able to lay the shovel flat at the bottom in any direction. That was why X-Ray wanted the shortest shovel. The lake was so full of holes and mounds that it reminded Stanley of pictures he saw of the moon. "If you find anything interesting or unusual," Mr. Pandensky told them, "you should report it either to me or Mr. Sir, and we'll come with the water truck. If the warden likes what you found, you'll get the rest of the day off." "What are we supposed to be looking for?" Stanley asked him. You're not looking for anything. You're digging to build character. It's just if you find anything, the warden would want to know about it." He glanced helplessly at his shovel. It wasn't defective. He was defective. He noticed a thin crack in the ground. He placed the point of his shovel on top of it, then jumped on the back of the blade with both feet. The shovel sank a few inches into the packed earth. He smiled. For once in his life, it paid to be overweight. He leaned on the shaft and pried up his first shovelful of dirt, then dumped it on the side. "Only 10 million more to go," he thought, then placed the shovel back in the crack and jumped on it again. He unearthed several shovelfuls of dirt in this manner before it occurred to him that he was dumping his dirt within the perimeter of his hole. He laid the shovel flat on the ground and marked where the edges of his hole would be. 5 feet was awfully wide. He moved the dirt he'd already dug out past his mark. He took a drink from his canteen. 5 feet would be awfully deep, too. The digging got easier after a while. The ground was hardest at the surface, where the sun had baked the crust about 8 inches deep. Beneath that, the earth was looser. But the time Stanley broke past the crust, a blister had formed in the middle of his right thumb, and it hurt to hold the shovel. Stanley's great-great-grandfather was named Ilya Yanatis. He was born in Latvia. When he was 15 years old, he fell in love with Myra Menke. He didn't know he was Stanley's great-great-grandfather yet. Myra Menke was 14. Sorry. When he turned 15 years old, he found them. Okay. Myra Menke was 14. She would turn 15, at which time her father had decided she should be married. Ilya went to her father and asked for her hand, but so did Igor Barvak, the pig farmer. Igor was 57 years old. He had a red nose and fat, puffy cheeks. "I'll trade you my fattest pig for your daughter," Igor offered. "And what have you got?" Myra's father asked Ilya. "A heart full of love," said Ilya. Desperate, Ilya went to Madame Zeroni, an old Egyptian woman who lived at the edge of town. He had become friends with her, though she was quite a bit older than him. She was even older than Igor Balvak. The other boys in the village liked to mud wrestle. Elia preferred visiting Madame Zeroni and listening to her many stories. Madame Zeroni had dark skin and a very wide mouth. When she looked at you, her eyes seemed to expand, and you felt like she was looking right through you. Oh, Elia, what's wrong? She asked before he even told her he was upset. She was sitting at the homemade wheelchair. She had no left foot. Her leg stopped at her ankle. I'm in love with Myra Menke, Elia confessed. But Igor Belbok has offered to trade his fattest pig for her. I can't compete with that. Good, said Madame Zeroni. You're too young to get married. You've got a whole life ahead of you. But I love Myra. Myra's head is as empty as a flower pot. But she's beautiful. So is a flower pot. Can she push a plow? Can she milk a goat? No, she's too delicate. Can she have an intelligent conversation? No, she is silly and foolish. Will she take care of you when you are sick? No, she is spoiled and will only want you to take care of her. So yes, she is beautiful. So what? Madame Zeroni spat on the dirt. She told Elia that he should go to America. Like my son, that's where your future lies, not with this Myra Menke. And Elia would hear none of it. He was 15, and all he could think of was Myra's shallow beauty. Madame Zeroni hated to see Elia so forlorn. Against her better judgment, she agreed to help him. It just so happens my sow gave birth to a litter of piglets yesterday. She said, there is one little runt whom you won't suckle. You may have him. He would die anyway. Madame Zeroni led Elia around the back of her house where she kept the pigs. Elia took the tiny piglet, but he didn't see the good it would do him. It wasn't much bigger than a rat. He'll grow, Madame Zeroni assured him. Do you see that mountain at the edge of the forest? Yeah, Elia said. On the top of the mountain, there's a stream where the water runs uphill. You must carry the piglet every day to the top of the mountain and let him drink from the stream. As it drinks, you are to sing to him. She taught Elia a special song to sing to the pig. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, you should carry the pig up the mountain for the last time. Then take it directly to Myra's father. It will be fatter than any of Igor's pigs. If it is that big and fat, asked Elia, how will I be able to carry it up a mountain? The piglet is not too heavy for you now, is it? Asked Madame Zeroni. Of course not, said Elia. You think it will be too heavy for you tomorrow? No. Every day you carry the pig up the mountain, it will get a little bigger, but you will get a little stronger. After that, you give that pig to Myra's father. I want you to do one more thing for me. Anything. I want you to carry me up the mountain. I want to drink from the stream, and I want you to sing a song to me. Elia promised he would. Madame Zeroni warned that if he failed to do this, he and his descendants would be doomed for all of eternity. At the time, Elia thought nothing of the curse. He was just a 15-year-old kid, and eternity didn't seem much longer than a week from Tuesday. Besides, he liked Madame Zeroni and would be glad to carry her up a mountain. He would have done it right then and there, but he wasn't strong enough yet. Back to the present time. Stanley was still digging. His hole was about 3 feet deep, but not only in the center. It sloped upward on the edges. The sun had only just come out over the horizon, but he already felt the hot rays against his face. As he reached down to pick up the canteen, he felt a sudden rush of dizziness and put his hands on his knees to steady himself. For a moment, he was afraid he would throw up, but that moment passed. He drank the last drop of water from the canteen. He had blisters on every one of his fingers, and one in the center of each palm. Everyone else's hole was a lot deeper than his. He couldn't actually see the holes, but he could tell by the size of their dirt pile. He saw a cloud of dust moving across the wasteland and noticed that the other boys had stopped digging and were watching it too. The dirt cloud moved closer, and he could see what trailed behind was a red pickup truck. The truck stopped near where they were digging, and the boys lined up behind it. X-ray in front, Zero in the rear. Stanley got in line behind Zero. Mr. Sir filled each canteen from a tank of water in the bed of the pickup. As he took Stanley's canteen from him, he said, this ain't Girl Scout camp, is it? Stanley raised and lowered one shoulder. Mr. Sir followed Stanley back to his hole to see how he was doing. You better get with it, or else you'll go be digging at the hottest part of the day. He popped sunflower seeds into his mouth, deftly removed the shells from his teeth, and spat them into Stanley's hole. Back to the past. Every day, Elia carried the little piglet up the mountain and sang to it as it drank from the stream. As the pig grew fatter, Elia grew stronger. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, Elia's pig weighed over 50 stones. Madame Zeroni had told him to carry the pig up the mountain on that day as well, but Elia didn't want to present himself to Myra smelling like a pig. Instead, he took a bath. It was his second bath in less than a week. Then he led the pig to Myra's. Igor Barzak was there with his pig as well. Oh, these are two of the finest pigs I ever seen, Myra's father declared. He was also impressed with Elia, who seemed to have grown bigger and stronger in the last 2 months. I used to think you were a good-for-nothing book reader, but I see you are an excellent mud wrestler now. May I marry your daughter? Elia boldly asked. First, I must weigh the pigs. Alas, for Elia should have carried his pig up the mountain one last time. The two pigs weighed exactly the same. Stanley's blisters had ripped open, and new blisters formed. He kept changing his grip on the shovel to try to avoid the pain. Finally, he removed his cap and held it between the shaft of his shovel and raw hands. This helped, but digging was harder because the cap would slip and slide. The sun beat down on his unprotected head and neck. Though he tried to convince himself otherwise, he'd been aware for a while that his piles of dirt were too close to his hole. The piles were outside his 5-foot circle, but he could see he was going to run out of the room. Still, he pretended otherwise and kept adding more dirt to the piles that would eventually have to move. The problem was that when the dirt was on the ground, it was compacted. It expanded when it was excavated. The piles were a lot bigger than the hole was deep. It was either now or later. Reluctantly, he climbed up out of the hole and once again dug his shovel into his previous dug dirt. We're going to pause here.